My name, I name, you know, my question is actually I was doing new things. What about you? Want to see it? So you want to they can't be that's the interesting. This sounds like yeah, you could just use that. Yes. No, no. Oh, no, you're okay. Only for the experience. So, que what the yeah, what's up? Hold on. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, there's center series. Just there's something. It's well, step one, step two, and from 1 to 8 minutes. That's the 1 to 3. Okay, sounds really good. Yeah. You hear me okay from here? I see that I think so. It's not even this way. It's like, what do you know? Well, testing. Just on checking. Testing. Oh, my God. So you're getting my what's on testing. Yes. Yeah, all of it. Yes. That's it. What? Thank you. I would be glad. I know. But it's a try. He's a you know. No, maybe. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You also two here. Yeah. So then, very things. Trust me. No, if you walking out of the seconds, the seven in the mind, I told you like that if you know, but it's two projects, text you saying, in 5 minutes, and never had to try. You put your hands up, going and person with your beat up. Yes, it's second. Well, at least done, but not least, he's coming there, so that's not even starting, you know, that's yes, it's me, thank you. Well, And then, all the thing, it's really, it's all, that's all. Yes, so, so, do you just need, so on the Zoom, do you just need the presentation? Do you need the Zoom to pan around with the camera, see in the back?
Or what's gonna happen is, this will take me about 15, 20 minutes. It's the presentation, yeah, everyone will speak up.
Okay.
I guess then go back there, have the camera.
No, actually, I have an option. You can do that. Yeah. Yeah, that change this over, right? Somebody can take his camera and go out there and say, please, see, because that would be ideal. Probably then. Like, ah, just, just lost to, like, which I even like, push my wife. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking, great. So good. Story. Yeah. I went like, yeah. I can just walk me in the gallery. Okay, do. Yes, we have to do the presentation to work really. No, exactly. So the only thing I have is that thing on it. With the in memoriam. No, that's for the evening. Was it what? Well, maybe that's so. I don't check the pass it. Pass it. Say it too much. Say it to the response. No, that's good. I don't. Maybe that. Okay. Absolutely. It's yes, we have scrap. Things. To talk about. So, that's it. That's it. I need to know. They're definitely, they're definitely. Yes, no, that's bad. Right. Because you basically the program along with the expo. I don't want to involved with this areas. That, yes, it's about. One more. Like that. Right. Yes. You need it? Can you pay somebody? Yeah. Okay, we wanted to use it. What is that you have? You can use it and bring it back. All right. Right there, though. Don't care. I was go back to them. Thank you, President. I'd like to give praise to the association for the honor of bringing this close to you. So first of all, I'd like to introduce my team that came an hour and a half to be with you so that we can bring this course to CMS from our school. So Liz, I want you to wave your hand. This is Liz in the back. Gina, back there, she's our connection coordinator. Eunice, there's Eunice, and CT. Okay. All right, so I work at the Ventura County Medical Center, which is about an hour and a half north of here, up to 405 and up to 101. And that's where I'm the trauma medical director, and I oversee this ongoing of what happens as far as trauma and also general surgery. So I'm going to start this by giving you this presentation about stop the bleed, and if we can have it on
the presentation was great. All right, so this course is one that's endorsed by the American College of Surgeons. And I know Dr. Adet Bonajo, as well as a few others, are members of the association. And the course was put together in 2015 as a result of what happened in Sandy Hook, as well as the Boston bombing. And the Obama White House endorsed it and asked that we have organizations come together. There are 4 organizations that came together: the American College of Surgeons, the Hartford Consensus, the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians. So they all came together and put together this course, and there are over 3.5 million people that have been taught the course all over the world. And it's even being done in Nigeria, Ghana, and several other countries all over the world. So the focus of the course is to save a life. The main goal is to save a life, because if you can save a life, then you keep somebody in this world for a longer period of time. It's just like CPR. If you know CPR, then you can save a life. So in regards to stop the bleed, the most important thing, first of all, is to maintain a safe environment. For example, if you have an earthquake that happens, since we're in California, we talk about earthquakes a lot. If an earthquake is happening, you don't want to run into the building because you get hurt yourself. So you want to make sure that the scene is safe before you go in. If there's a random shooter that's going back and forth, and you don't want to run into the area that's being shot. So you ensure the scene is safe before you go in, and then you can help the individual. Otherwise, you become a victim yourself. And if you become a victim, then you're no use to the individual. And some of the images that we'll present are disturbing. So if you can't stand the sight of blood, I can't stand the sight of blood. When I see blood, I pass out and I faint. So when I see a lot of blood, they have to get the ammonia salts out. And I say, there he goes again, and they revive me. No, I'm just kidding about that. The number one cause of preventable death after injury is bleeding. So bleeding will cause a person to die, mostly because if you can't control it, then they end up dying. And why do we need this course? That's a big question that you probably have in your mind. Well, the reason being is if you're at home and you're cutting turkey during Thanksgiving, you slice your finger and you start bleeding, then you know what to do. I mean, when I'm shaving and I'm bleeding, then I know what to do. I put pressure on it and it stops the bleeding. It can happen in terms of a motor vehicle collision or a train crash or a bus crash. You may be the first person over there, or the first responder. And if you get there on time, then at least you know what to do and you can control the bleeding. Unfortunately, massive shootings tend to make the media more so than anything else. And so that's what we hear all the time. Nevertheless, if you are at a scene in which there's a mass shooting, then you know what to do and you can save a life. All right, so you want to identify life-threatening bleeding first of all. And life-threatening bleeding is not bleeding that occurs slowly. It's one that occurs rapidly. For example, if you have bleeding that occurs around your shirt and it's about the size of a quarter, and then 2 seconds later, it's now 3 times the size. 10 seconds later, it's 5 times the size. That's bleeding that's going to kill you. Or bleeding that occurs when you can see the blood spurting out, or you can hear it. That's called audible bleeding. This is the equivalent of 500 milliliters. For those of you that know the equivalent of milliliters or ounces, it's about half a pint. So this is the equivalent of half a pint of bleeding. If you see this amount of bleeding around somebody and it continues, then they're going to die from it. Now, you'll learn how to pack wounds and put tourniquets on. And by the way, everyone over here will get a tourniquet as a gift, so that you can place it in your glove compartment or any part of your car, so you can use it in the event that you have a person that's bleeding. I have one in my glove compartment, and I have packing gauze. So we talked about safety already. You can also move the patient or the individual to a safe area if the scene is unsafe, so you can take care of them. if you have gloves to wear, you have somebody that's bleeding. Most of us don't have gloves, right? So, I mean, if you don't have any gloves available to take care of the individual, you can use a plastic bag. You can put a plastic bag over your hands, and that can serve as a barrier to protect you. Because, as you know, we've got diseases in the community all over the world. We've got HIV, we've got hepatitis, and you want to protect yourself. In the event that you cannot have gloves to use or do not have those, then you can have the EMS or the paramedics wash your hands off when they get there. So the first thing is we learn about ABCs of CPR, right? So A for airway, B for breathing, and then C for circulation. But in this case, it's a little different. So A is for alerts. Call 911. That's the first thing that you should do, or have somebody do. Call 911, because if you do that, then at least the law enforcement agents as well as the paramedics can come to the scene. And if the scene is unsafe, they can make it controlled. And here we got somebody calling 911. And then B is for bleeding. So you want to look for where the bleeding is coming from. I mean, the bleeding can come from any part of the body, the head, the neck, the chest, the abdomen, anywhere. So you need to be able to identify where the bleeding is coming from. Also, you want to figure out if the bleeding is life-threatening, like we talked about. Bleeding that's life-threatening is the one that will kill you, not just slow bleeding. If somebody's arm is hanging off, they're going to be bleeding like crazy, so you need to be able to stop that bleeding. Here's a picture of blood coming out of a model. This is a pig model. That kind of bleeding will kill you. So if this doesn't stop and you don't control it, that person will die. So that's the kind of bleeding that we're talking about that's life-threatening. Also here, this is a picture of somebody with an injury to the leg. This is a knee, the foot is over here, and this is a bone broken. It's called the tibia or the leg bone. All right, so in terms of the bleeding, bleeding can occur from the arms or the legs, and in that situation, you can either use packing gauze or a tourniquet. So you can put a tourniquet onto the arm or the leg, and you can control bleeding that way. We'll go through how to put a tourniquet on, and you will practice on yourselves or on the models back there. Now, in terms of what's called junctional bleeding, this is bleeding that occurs around the neck or the armpit or the groin. In that situation, you can't put a tourniquet on because it's difficult to put a tourniquet around the armpit, or it's difficult to put a tourniquet around the groin, right? Certainly you can put a tourniquet around the neck, but if you do that, then you're going to end up in jail in orange jumpsuit. You may be there for a long time, even if your neighbor tapped your electricity and you don't like them, don't do it. So yeah, as far as those areas goes, you pack it with gauze and hold pressure. All right, now there's also bleeding that can occur around the trunk. The trunk is from the low part of the neck all the way down to the groin and to the back. And in that area, if somebody's bleeding, then they have to get to a trauma center, because internal bleeding is something you can't control. You can try to pack it or try to put pressure on it. It wouldn't help, because you can be bleeding from the liver, the spleen, the intestines, any organs on the inside, and you can't control that kind of bleeding with pressure. So, you ensure your safety. You look for life-threatening bleeding. If there's a trauma kit or no trauma kit in this situation, then you use any clean cloth or gauze to pack the wound. Now, we're going to go through the kind of gauzes there are. You can even use a shirt. That's the reason why we have on these shirts. It says this shirt can save a life. You can use a shirt to pack a wound, and it will control the bleeding. You can even use a dirty sock. You can treat an infection if somebody gets an infection from the dirty sock, and it will still be alive, rather than saying, I don't want to use a sock because it's dirty, and then they end up dying. So you have to put things in perspective. So you can use anything to pack the wound, as long as you have the ability to treat an infection. And then the question is, how much pressure do you use, and how do you apply pressure? Well, you use both hands, and you put as much pressure as you can until the bleeding stops. And once the bleeding stops, you hold pressure and you don't let go. In the past, in the 90s, we used to say you have to allow oxygen to flow through after a few minutes and you let up on the pressure. But now that's changed. You hold pressure and you don't let go. Otherwise, you will peak and shriek. You know, we don't want you shrieking when you peak. So you hold pressure and hold it there until the paramedics show up. This is somebody who came across an individual who's bleeding from the leg, right? And they're taking off their shirt. So in a situation like this, even if you have a shirt that's signed by Burna Boy, and it's your best shirt, would you take it off to pack a wound? Recently, we were doing a course 2 weeks ago. It's called Junior Lifeguards. We had 300 kids, and they range from the age of 9 through 18. And we asked the same question. We said, if you have a shirt that's signed by one of the famous people. And, pardon? Yeah, and then one of the kids said, no, I wouldn't take my shirt off. And I said, oh, well, what if the person is dying? Would you take his shirt off then? And he said, no, I'd rather go to jail. And I can use the money from the shirt to bail me out. They argued with me, so I said, well, I guess I'm not getting anywhere with this kid. So anyway, so you apply pressure and hold it nice and tight. In this situation, what do you think that he's missing here? Gloves, exactly. But then again, I think he's doing the best that he can. So he's holding pressure as hard as he can to prevent the bleeding. Now, this is a clip that shows packing. It's a brief clip. Let's see if I can play it. Let's see if there's. So this is a model similar to what we have in the back of the rooms that you're going to practice on. And it'll show you how to hold pressure on the area that's bleeding.
Should be clean now.
So here we have a wound, and she's going to use a shirt, similar shirt that we have on, to pack the wound, and then double it over, and then hold pressure. Okay, that's basically what you do, you hold tight. All right, this is a cadaver model, and there's some blood that should be coming out of a wound that has been created on the thigh. This is a knee, and this is a thigh, so you hold pressure. Now, there's one thing about blood vessels. The largest blood vessel in our body is called the aorta, and the aorta comes from the heart, and it goes all the way down and spreads to different parts of the body. It's about the size, the diameter of my thumb, and that's not that big, but it has a lot of pressure because the heart pumps, and when it pumps and you're bleeding, if you don't hold pressure on that blood vessel, the individual will die. So even if the cut is about that much, you can stop the bleeding with one finger, as long as you know where it's coming from. So it doesn't take a lot to stop that bleeding, but you have to know where it is coming from. Okay, here's another model of bleeding, and the individual is going to pack the area. And that's how you have to pack it, like you're stuffing a turkey, except for the fact that it's not a turkey, but it's gruesome. But you have to do it, otherwise you lose a life. So that's how we start bleeding. And the gauze goes in and it stays, and when the patient gets to the hospital, then we take it out when they go to surgery if they need to. Okay, so you have a tourniquet available if you have bleeding. Then you can apply it above where the bleeding is coming from. The goal is to apply it at least 2 to 3 inches above the wound. So if the wound is in the forearm, you apply it above, close to the elbow. You certainly don't want to apply it to the joints or apply it where there's foreign bodies like a wallet. Or remember when we had brick phones? If you have a brick phone in your pocket and you put a tourniquet on it, it's not going to work. So you take the contents of the pocket out use it, and you certainly want to expose it. So here's a tourniquet that's been applied over here, and that's the wound on the arm. This is the shoulder over here. So the tourniquet is above where the bleeding is coming from, and you make it nice and tight. And like I say, you get a tourniquet as a gift to go home today. So we already talked about 2 to 3 inches above the bleeding. Don't apply to joints like knees or elbows. It wouldn't work in those areas. And then you tighten it up till it stops. This is the most common tourniquet. It's called a CAT tourniquet, the Combat Application Tourniquet. Those in the military have a tourniquet in their pack, as well as the EMS. They all have tourniquets. There are other tourniquets that are on the market, but this is the most common kind and the type that we use. And here it is again. And there are all of these different kinds, but I'll focus on the Combat Activation Tourniquet. All right, I'll skip over this. The CAT tourniquet has a strap. It's got the rod, and then the clip, and then a band. And generally, you insert the arm or leg through the tourniquet. You make it tight. You take off the slack. You wrap it around. And you'll practice this. And then there's a rod that you twist. And generally, when you twist it to the right. We say it righty-tighty. So right makes it tight. So you twist it to the right. And then it locks in place. It locks in place right there. And then afterwards, you bring the slack over, and then you put this white band across, and it's got time written on it. Why do you think we have time written on it?
Document time.
Yeah, you want to document the time that the tourniquet was put on, because when the patient comes into our hospitals, we want to know how long it's been on for. And certainly you can leave a tourniquet on for a long time. If the arm drops off, at least the person is alive. But 2, 3, 4 hours, you should be fine. Okay, and let's see this place. So here the tourniquet being applied. So you wrap it around, and these are made so an individual can place it on themselves. If there's somebody in the military who gets injured and can place it on themselves. So you apply it, you make it nice and snug. And it's got Velcro attachments that cause it to stick. And now the rod is being tightened. So, and these hurt, by the way. When I had it placed on as a practice, and I got a bruise on my arm. It hurts, and the people will complain about the fact that it hurts, and you have to reassure them that when the paramedics get there, they'll give them pain medicine. But it hurts when it goes on. There you go, and then write a time on there. Okay, and you'll play this. Yeah, similarly goes around, and this tourniquet is orange. And this is what the paramedics have. They have an orange tourniquet because it's more visible, and that's the reason why theirs is orange. Those in the military have black tourniquets because obviously for camouflage purposes. So you put a tourniquet on, and you can see the amount of blood coming out. And you twist and twist until it slows down and stops. You think you can do this? No? Well, I think when it comes to a situation in which you're pressed, you may be able to do it. Yeah. All right, so we'll go on. So as far as using the tourniquets, if one doesn't work, you can use 2. So you put one tourniquet on above the bleeding area. If it doesn't stop it, you can put another one on if you have another tourniquet. So you can pack it or hold pressure. And we talked about amputations and so on and so forth. None has happened for those tourniquets left in place for less than 2 hours. We also talked about the fact that tourniquets hurt, and you have to reassure the individual. And it's easier said than done, but it's one thing that needs to be reinforced. Some of the mistakes that are made is a tourniquet gets put on, it's not put on as tight as it should be. Then it doesn't work and the person keeps bleeding or it hurts and it gets loosened and you shouldn't do that. All right, so let's go into compression. As far as this kind of gauze, this gauze is a type that has some agents in it that slow bleeding, but you don't necessarily have to have it. You can use a regular bandage or, like I said, a shirt. This kind of gauze has a blue stripe in it, and this blue stripe is radio opaque. So if somebody has it in and you can't identify how many has been impacted, when we take an X-ray of it, it shows up. Otherwise, as you know, if you use a gauze and it stays in place for a long period of time, then you start having tissue that dies off. So we want to know if gauze is packed in somebody so we can take it out. Otherwise, that's a big lawsuit. If you leave a foreign body in an individual, you have to expose the area, then you pack it. When you have a wound, sometimes you see a wound and you think it's only a small wound and you don't know how deep it is. But you have to pack it deeply to be able to stop the bleeding. If you put the gauze on top, you can still have blood vessels oozing from it and the person will keep bleeding. So you have to pack it tightly. And let's see, let's show this as far as the model. And these are similar models as we have in the back. So we have a slash wound over here from a knife, and then the individual is packing the area and just keeps packing. And some of these wounds are deep. You keep packing and packing, and you can't see the end of it, and you think that it's never going to end, but eventually it will. You just keep packing bit by bit, stuffing it in, and then you hold pressure. Like that. Okay. All righty. As far as children goes, there are some small tourniquets, but they're not many of them. So if somebody is bleeding like a 10-month-old or 1-year-old, you can always hold pressure. The big tourniquets won't work for them. And just hold pressure. And when medics get there, they can wash your hands off if you don't have gloves. So the important thing as far as the summary, A for alert, call 911, and B for bleeding, C for depression, and apply a tourniquet and wait for help. All right, so these are packs that can be obtained, or maybe some of them have a tourniquet and the packing gauze, as well as the pen, a Sharpie that you can use to write the time on, as well as gloves. These packs have many individual wrapped tourniquets, etc. These are now in public places. We went to, there were a group of us, a combination of physicians from Dr. Doucette from UC San Diego, then Dr. Mize from UC San Francisco, Dr. Liepert, who's also from UC San Diego, she's from UC Davis, Loma Linda University, and this is Freddy Rodriguez, Assembly Member Freddy Rodriguez from California, who proposed the bill along with us, and we had to go to the Sacramento to testify in the Senate. And so it went through the appropriations, went through the committee, and then it got approved and it got signed by the governor in 2022. And even Taylor Swift endorsed it. So these kits are now in public places like the airport, right next to defibrillators, or in buildings that are newly put together that are $100,000 or more. So the only thing more tragic than a death is a death that could have been prevented. And you got to think about that. Prevention is better than cure. And you can get some more information from bleedingcontrol.org. And you have some information on your table. If anyone didn't get a pamphlet, let us know. We can give you that pamphlet. So at this point in time, we will break up into different groups. We have 5 stations back there. And anyone interested in learning how to pack a wound or put a tourniquet on, please come back there. I think we should break up into groups of 10, just based on the numbers I see. And that'll take about another 10 minutes or so. So I truly appreciate you giving us the opportunity to bring it to you. Exactly. Any questions before we get back there? All right, here are none, and we can split up to go back. Oh, you have a question over here.
Is it the same procedure for someone who's on the Okay. I just want to know if it's the same thing, the same procedure or process with somebody who's on warfarin.
Well, warfarin is a blood thinner, also known as codeine. And that will cause your blood to be thin. So the bleeding that can occur from warfarin requires you to hold pressure for a longer period of time because your bleeding time will be extended. Normally if your blood stops coming out or you get a clot within a minute, now with warfarin it can extend to like 5 minutes. So you have to hold pressure longer. So it's a lot different with warfarin. Actually, it's one of our enemies, but you have to take it for some conditions. All right, anything else? Yes, sir.
To save the life of somebody, are you protected from Good Samaritan law?
The question is, are we protected from the Good Samaritan law? That's a good question because the Good Samaritan law says that you are protected by taking care of an individual and wouldn't have any lawsuits brought against you if you intervene. In that situation, I think it varies from state to state, but generally, if you are intervening because you have a certificate, like going through a course like this, then you are protected and you should be able to provide it and say, I know how to do this, I've been trained, and the great lawyers can bring it against you.
Okay.
All right, so let's split up and go to the back and go through the practice model.
This one, you found this one. Which one is it? On going on. That's it. Oh, that. Just. Stop. Just not anyone at all. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're next? Oh, I guess you are. Yeah. Hey, what is it? Are you gonna go figure out how to stop the bleed over there? Go figure out how to stop the bleed. I'll call 911.
You hold it so that as much as possible. No, it's not that sorry, bro. I can't take that.
You're going to feel like it's a lot tighter, and then wherever you dip it in there. So on that turn, lift. Strap that. Put that.
That's it.
You know what? I will take you. Don't worry. I have my stuff.
There's still more stuff. There's still the Board of Trustees presentation. There's still more presentations to do. Sample George. Then look at the program. Then fundraising. You go to program one. Program one year over book. Well, it's in there, but remember, we always tell people to bring their book and bring it back there. So we collected 9,000. In ads, just ads, 9,000. What do you do? Come on now. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. You can't use it electronic for Pete's sake. Some people want that thing. Yeah. No.
Mike.
Dr. Donka, are we done after this? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Because we have to move forward. Please.
Endowment coming up. Endowment 4.